Welcome to Aligned for Success podcast, where we help chiropractors create practices that truly serve their life's vision. I'm your host, Dr. Nikki and I'm here to show you how to break free from stagnation, grow your practice, and rediscover the joy of why you became a chiropractor to begin with. Whether you're looking to boost your revenue, spend more time with family, or simply enjoy practice life again, you're in the right place. Let's align your path to success. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Aligned for Success. Today, I am here with Tina Gottlieb, and Tina has been in practice. Well, she's owned her practice for 29 years. And so the reason that I wanted Tina to come onto the podcast is because she has a lot of experience. And so she's raised a family. A lot of people who listen to this either don't have kids yet or they're very young. I know mine's only 6. And so I wanted Tina to share all of the things she's learned about motherhood, entrepreneurship, and everything in between with all of you. So welcome, Tina.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Yes, thanks for coming. Yeah, so I'd love for you to just go ahead and share with us a little about your journey into chiropractic, opening a business, all of the things.
Yeah. So I graduated from Palmer College of Chiropractic in Davenport in 1996 and wanted to come back to California to practice. But by the time I graduated, I knew that I wanted to open an upper cervical practice. That was what had changed my life so radically. And so everywhere I met people, they told me it couldn't be done, that you couldn't open a practice on your own with zero money, and that you certainly couldn't do it in an upper cervical fashion. And I think one of my strengths was I don't hear no or can't. I was going to do what I was going to do. So in 1996, I opened my practice inside an office with 3 other doctors. I signed a contract that everybody told me wasn't really smart because it involved a lot of money on my end. But for me, it was the way I was going to do it. And so I practiced in Northern California for 6 years and then realized that I spent all my time traveling to see my family in Southern California. The dot-com boom was happening at that point. So if you didn't have a lease on your office, you would lose it. Home prices were astronomical. And so I made the decision to relocate to Southern California. I sold that first practice to another doctor and came down to another place where, again, I knew nobody and had no connections. And I opened a practice. And I've been in the same practice here in Temecula, California since 2002.
That is awesome. So when you moved from Northern California to Southern, were you married? Did you already have the family? When did you start your family?
So my husband and I have actually been a couple for 35 years. So he, after he got out of the Marine Corps, he had moved to Iowa and was with me for part of my education in Iowa. And then he was there for most of the time in Northern California. And then again, when we moved to Southern California. So I had always said that before I got married, I wanted to have my degree and I wanted to have my business. So the relationship was super important to me, but I wanted certain things before I did that. So it wasn't until we moved to Southern California that we got married and then decided to start a family.
I love that. I love that you're like, I have at least a plan of when I want to start and what needs to happen first. So now walk us through, after you opened your practice, what happened? Was it easy? Was it hard? Was it both?
It was both. I mean, so here's the interesting thing, and this is like, we'll come to the end and then go back. I realized about 6 weeks ago that I have achieved everything I ever said I wanted to do. But at the same token, I had that beautiful realization in a moment of frustration. And so the moment of frustration was that I now have this new vision that's bigger and grander. Back then, I didn't know that things could be a certain way. So what I knew that was possible was somewhat limited in a way. But when I look at my life now, like I live in this beautiful town. I said I wanted to live in a town where I can practice, raise a family, be part of a community, give back, and make an impact in people's lives all in one place. And so when I look back now on the 22 years I've been in this town, I've done all of those things. I live in a beautiful house in a beautiful neighborhood in this great community, and I've made an immense impact. But now I have this new vision of what I want to do and how much grander that is than it ever was. So in some ways, yes, it was easy. I was able to create and build what I wanted We had an enormous amount of struggles that happened that you'll laugh when I tell you what they were along the way. But I did pick a place that was wonderful. And I've always been surrounded by amazing patients who were part of what I wanted to create and who leaned in and believed in that. But there have been some moments that were extremely stressful.
I'm sure. I love what you said about like one day in a moment of frustration, you're like, I'm actually living my dream, but it's not my dream anymore. And so I know that I can do so much more. Even being in practice for 29 years, you're like, wait a minute, I can pivot, I can change, and I know that I'm meant for so much more. Tell us more about that. So is there anything specific that happened that made you realize that? Was it just like a culmination of things? Was there any kind of trigger?
It was many things. So I feel like, you know, that saying that when you're about to quantum leap, the universe like asks you if you're sure. It's like it throws those speed bumps in front of you. And I feel like I've been on a little bit of a vicious cycle of that over the last number of years. And I think it's always important. I love the saying that you are the sum of the people you spend the most time with, and you should be really intentional about that. Well, I believe those rooms can be virtual too. They don't have to be live. And I think coming into the Wealthy Practitioner, there was a couple statements that Stephanie makes that hit me really, really strong. And that one is that you can have it all, that you get to have it all, and what that all is. But then at the same time, that voice in my head that said also, but it doesn't have to be hard, Tina, and it can be even better than you thought. And so I think those were some of my limiting beliefs in life, was that it had to be hard, or it had to take a long time. You had to trudge uphill. And so I think I've just been on this journey, but certainly mid last year, I had a very significant injury, and laying on a ballroom floor face down gets your attention in a really, really big way. And so I had already been in this process, already in the journey, but I really kind of leaned into that. And so I knew I wanted more, and I knew I wanted it to be grander. I just didn't know. I felt like I was constantly pushing and pushing to make it happen. And it wasn't exponentially, it was crawling. And so the week before last, I made a decision. We always take off spring break. So that was one of my things as a mom. When my daughter hit first grade, I said, there's a lot of balances to being a parent and owning a business and in practice. And I said, I'm going to take off spring break, and it's going to be about my kid. And I'm going to do nothing but what she wants, whether that's the beach or the pool or hanging out and going to the bookstore. And so this year in college, she wasn't real sure she was getting a week off. So I'm looking at that week, and I looked at my assistant. I said, you know what? Let's take it off for your daughter's spring break. Let's let you have the experience that I've always had, but I'm going to take it off anyways. I'm going to sit at home, and I'm going to think, and I'm going to do nothing. And that was a really hard one. So with a lot of financial losses from a fall, to be able to step out of your practice during that time, it rubbed me a little bit the wrong way, but I was like, no, innately, I know this is what I need to do. And so I really honored that. And that week was transformative for me. I think it filled in some of those gaps that part of the problem was that I was pushing and that I was trying so incredibly hard. So I've had a lot of breakthroughs in that time where I now know how that quantum leap is going to happen and to get out of my own way.
That is like so awesome. I got chills multiple times when you were talking. And just my favorite part of it is like being present and being still. So like, it's not always about the grind. We need to take time to sit down and think about what is it that I actually want. And then when you actually did that, you realized, well, holy crap, I have everything that I set out to do. And now I get to figure out what comes next. I also love what you said about the community and just being in a community around other people who are not just motivating, but also are like truly uplifting. I feel like that makes such a big difference in how we perceive success. So there will be times where I'm like, oh, I'm struggling, I'm failing, I'm not doing anything right. And then it's like, wait, actually I'm crushing it. And there are all these other people around you telling you that. And so I know for me, I've always been like part of a community. And I love what you said about Steph. And I think it's everyone's favorite thing about Steph is like when you join the Wealthy Practitioner, you're not getting like a day 1, day 2 process. Now we go through systems and we go through procedures, but what you really get is how to like unscrew your mindset, and how it's like, it doesn't have to be hard and it doesn't have to be work to get to the next level. She really encourages the slow down. Now, next, I'd love for you, Tina, to just talk more about how you really balance having a practice and being a mom. So I love that you took off spring break. The spring break for me right now, and my daughter is only 6, and I kept thinking, I should have took the week off because we would have had so much fun. So I'm glad you said that, because now that's also something that I'm going to consider for next year too. It's also slower at my practice. Everyone else is out of town. So it's a great reminder though. But I'd love for you to just share how you balanced motherhood and owning a business with us.
Yeah, it's in hindsight. I mean, my daughter's 18 now in her first year of college. So it's one of the things I'm pretty proud of myself. Like I'm proud of the value that I placed on both simultaneously. And I think that I never subscribed to the illusion that balance exists. So I think I had that going for me. I realized that life teeters between the things that we value the most. And I was never willing to sacrifice either. I wanted both, and I wanted to be present for both. So some of the things I think was just leaning into the fact that you can't expect it to be a balanced thing. But in hindsight now, the clarity is so there that, first of all, I would have cut myself a lot more slack. The mom guilt is real. And the older me would tell the younger me to just let that go, because half the time it was made up in my head and not real. But now I look at who my daughter is and how she is the way she is because of the benefits of me being a business owner. It put her in rooms. It gave her experiences. It taught her about the value that I give to the world and the effort I put in things. And so there is just so incredible clarity with that. One of my favorite stories from recently is that early in 2021, we had been nominated as Small Business of the Year for 2020. And so my daughter, of course, during that period of time, had spent all of her time in my office doing her schoolwork, doing whatever while we saw patients. And so I brought her to this massive gala with me and with my staff. And so we walk into a ballroom of 900 people, and she's dressed in her gorgeous gala gown. And the girl takes off because she's got people she wants to see and people she wants to talk to, and she's quite comfortable doing that. And so I laughed thinking, well, I didn't know what she was going to do for a couple of hours schmoozing, but she was better at it than me. And we happened to win that award. And so I'm sitting at the table, and she's like, Mom, that's your name. Like, you just said your name. Like, you got to go on the stage now. I was just so stunned. And standing on that stage and hearing your teenager in the audience screaming and cheering for you was a really incredible moment. But that night is the culmination of all of it. It's that she felt so comfortable in that room, that she had her own contacts in that room of people she wanted to communicate with. And then her, again, opting into that vision of what I do and how I serve the world was a really beautiful moment.
That is so special. And it's just like, I love that. You said she was at your office. Did you guys homeschool, or did she go to school?
No. So I say she grew up in my office, but she didn't. When she was a baby, she came to work with me. That was a very hard, challenging time. And then when she was 2.5, we put her into an incredible daycare that's in our town. And that was the easy time. Like, I dropped her off early in the morning and picked her up whenever. But I tell people, so one of my biggest mom guilt moments, they had a Mother's Day tea that they did. Now, Father's Day pancake breakfast was at 6 a.m. The Mother's Day tea was at 10:30.
Of course. So, let's make it for the dad can go before work.
Yeah. So like, my kid goes to daycare for a reason, people. Yeah. So I get there, she's 3 years old, and I go to drop her off the day of the Mother's Day tea. And I can see by the sign-in sheet that she is the only child who won't have a mother there. And my heart just like falls into my chest. And so I squatted down and I looked at her and I said, Mason, I said, I am pretty sure you're going to be the only kid here today whose mom isn't here. I said, I feel really bad. And she looks at me and she goes, I will sing you the song later tonight. Your patients need you.
Oh my gosh. I'm like crying over here, Tina.
Yeah. So the funny part of that is my friend Claire started about 4 years ago, shared this video of the Mother's Day tea song. And I'm like, why does this not look familiar to me? I'm like, wait, there's my kid. Like, I'm like, oh, that's not here.
That's that one.
So there was no need to have Mother's Day guilt. She got it. She got the big picture. But she understood what I did because of those moments. So like if she wasn't in daycare or if school was out, she was at my practice. In the summer, sometimes she was in my practice. Sometimes she would come hang out with me and my mom would come get her and take her to lunch. So when she was really young until middle school, a lot of her time was spent in this beautiful place with camp and things. But in middle school, certainly there was that period where that's where she lived because the world operated in a different place. And then somewhat in high school too. So, but even from a young age, I felt like to a degree she grew up in there because she understood what we did and how we served.
That is so good. And like, you know, my daughter is young and I struggle with that a lot. She went to the zoo last week on a field trip and she's like, Mom, are you coming? I'm like, I'm so sorry, Hazel, I have to work. And she's like, I understand. So it's nice to hear that in 15 years, she's not going to, bring that up. Like, remember that time you were at the zoo? It's more like, oh, you taught me how you could have everything, how you could still have a family, have a business. And honestly, anytime she's like saying something, I'm like, do you like going on vacation? Do you like doing all of these things? I'm like, I'm showing you the world instead of, spending time with you at a 2-hour zoo trip. But that's just a really good reminder that our kids do understand so much more than we give them credit for. Both of my parents always worked, and I never looked at it as they're missing things. I always thought of it as they're doing all of these things for me to give me a better life and to make sure that when I grow up, I can have the opportunity to do these things too. And I think just like you said, as you got older and further into practice, there was more of this ebb and flow. And so it's such a great reminder. So thank you for sharing. That was a special story. I literally had a tear in my eye. But one last question for you, Tina. If I asked you, what is one decision that you've made as a mom, as a business owner, to help to align your life for success?
It was that having a business and allowing myself to be authentically who I was and knowing that how that fit into my life was just as valuable. I don't think there's any one wrong way. I think if people want to be stay-at-home moms, I think if they want to work part-time, I think there's value in all of those choices. Authentically for me, I knew that having my own practice and being a chiropractor actively was just genetically part of me and part of what lights me on fire. So giving myself that permission to have it all, to be a wife and to be a mom and to still give back and go to Rotary and to chamber events and to do it all was good, and to not let it get in the way of, like you said, having fun and doing those crazy things with your kids. And simultaneously being willing to take that week and be like, yep, you do see me in town that week. And I might just be at a pool or I might be at the beach, but it was value. So I think it was giving value to all those things that matter most to me kept me aligned with who I was and kept me on fire.
I love it. Well, thank you so very much for sharing your story, but most importantly, your wisdom to all of us. I so appreciate you having on. And thank you all for tuning in to another episode of Align for Success. I will see you next week. Thanks for tuning in to Aligned for Success. If today's episode resonated with you, please be sure to subscribe and leave a review. This helps other chiropractors find their way to practice freedom too. Remember, true success comes from when your practice aligns with your life's purpose. Until next time, I'm Dr. Nikki Cottis, reminding you that a thriving practice and a fulfilling life go hand in hand. See you next week.